Hello, I'm Alvin Aniwa, student number 100-603-501, and this is my superblog. It's about the cloudscapes in Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon Zero Dawn is a game developed by Gorilla as a PS4 exclusive, and in it you play as the protagonist Aloy, trying to save the world from the evil of the past. Had a long history of making games. However, most of these games aren't open world as Horizon Zero Dawn was. In order to make Horizon Zero Dawn the masterpiece that it was, they had to make a lot of changes and adjustments to the way they usually make games. One of these was the cloudscape. Um, Basically, when still developing games like Killzone, the cloudscapes were these picturesque but singular pieces of sky dome, and they decided this wouldn't work for Horizon Zero Dawn because the sky needed to be more animated. It needed to have more realism to it. So they decided they would make the sky more realistic, make the clouds more realistic. So the cloud goals were for it to be art directable, meaning the artists of the team could go into the game and edit what the clouds looked like, but the clouds also had to be realistic, and then they had to be modifiable with weather, and then they also had to move over time. And last but not least, they had to look epic all the time. Um, so for their early exploration, they tried um, using a custom fluid solver to grow clouds, and to a certain degree, it was good, but it wasn't exactly to their liking. So um, they did this um, by selecting shapes and placing them in the form a cloud is most likely to take, and then applying the fluid solver until it started to look more cloud-like. Then after some tweaks here and there, they used spherical harmonics to um, to um, to bake the light data straight into the game. Next, they try rendering all the clouds set to produce as one cloud set to produce a sky dome that could also blend into the atmosphere of a death. However, their solution didn't work so well because um, they felt it wasn't realistic enough. So they decided they'd have to go with another path which would be voxel clouds, meaning full shaped clouds in the game itself. So they used tiled 3D textures to simulate cloud shapes, and then a prototype GL shader was built to develop the cloud system and lighting model. Um, After doing that, the clouds were better than the previous solution, but once they're put in motion, they look broken again. Um, However, this wasn't so bad, and they knew they could improve on it. So that's the final cloud system that was used in Horizon Zero Dawn. And it was made in 4 parts, which are modeling, lighting, rendering, and optimization. And this super blog is mostly to talk about modeling. Um, so when it comes to modeling, there are specific variables that affect the shape of the clouds. These range from the density increasing at lower temperatures to clouds rising with heat from the earth, and dense regions um, making round shapes as they rise. Um, so a technique called ray matching was used to produce clouds. A ray is matched from the camera and samples noises and a set of gradients to define the cloud shapes. Noises are basically um, these spectrums of difference, I would say. Um, that's the ray basically picks up on. And here's a bit of sample code. And in the ray match, the sampler is used to build up an alpha channel and calculate lighting. And to create real-time volume clouds, the usual approach was to draw them in a height zone above the camera using a method called fractal Brownian motion, which was done by laying noises called paired-in noises of different frequencies until you get something detailed. The noise was then combined with a gradient to define a change in cloud density over height. Even though the clouds produced with this were very nice looking, there are no larger shapes or visual cues to the evolution of clouds. Basically, even though the fractal Brownian motion approach has nice wispy shapes, or had nice wispy shapes, it lacked the usual bulges and billows of real clouds. For that, a new shader was needed, and the shader also operated using noise, but unlike paired-in noise, was capable of creating the desired shape. It was called Wally noise, and it was usually used for caustics and water effects, but it could also be used for the cloud effects, and it was used to offset the paired-in noise rather than completely replace it, so that you still have that wispiness at the same time, have the billowing shapes, and they would both connect nicely. So, in the end, these were stored as textures, and they were stored as 2 3D textures and 1 2D texture. And these textures combined gave the cloud its realistic look, with realistic interactions between the clouds and the environment. And also they got the epicness factor they were looking for due to changing of the cloud type or evolution of the cloud by radius. So the further away the clouds got, the more diverse or thick they became,